Did you know that the Iraqi city of Fallujah has the highest rate of birth defects in the world? Yes, higher even than Hiroshima and Nagasaki after the US dropped atomic bombs on them in World War II. 17 years ago, the US and its allies lied about weapons of mass destruction and illegally invaded Iraq, causing a trail of sectarian violence, civil war, destruction, poverty, and the rise of Daesh. The offensive also plagued a generation with cancers, increased miscarriages, as well as horrific birth defects in newborns throughout much of Iraq. From congenital heart disease to deformed limbs to spina bifida, the list is endless. Doctors say that one of the most plausible reasons for this could be the weapons made with depleted uranium and white phosphorus that were used during the fighting.
I am working here since 1997. It means before the invasion of Fallujah by about 7 years. According to my experience and also according to my colleagues' experience, there was an increasing number of birth defects during the last few years. Let me say from about 2005 till now.
A byproduct of enriching uranium, depleted uranium, is used to power nuclear reactors. But because of its armor-piercing capability, it's also used to make bullets and shells. When used, their radioactive dust contaminates the surrounding area, which can cause gene mutations that can pass from one generation to another. In Fallujah, doctors have reported a staggering increase in abnormalities, an average of 30 cases a month. Many of them have no family history of congenital diseases.
We collected samples from the babies affected with birth defects and their families. Nearly all the samples show some levels of chemicals and depleted uranium.
Sometimes the cases are so severe that newborns don't make it. There are cemeteries that are full of graves of children. In the two wars in 1991 and 2003, at least 400 tons of depleted uranium ammunition is believed to have been fired, mostly by US forces. It contaminated large swathes of the country. Fallujah, an opposition stronghold against the US occupation in 2004, was the worst hit, and the massive military assaults completely razed it. This was once a football field, and then the American forces arrived. Now it's a cemetery known to locals as the Graveyard of Martyrs.
الفلوجة كانت محاصرة، الامريكان هاي وين؟ كسروا البوب وفتحوها قاموا يدفنون عمي يدفنون شهداء موت الله.
As the civilian casualties mounted, people began volunteering to recover the bodies. Among them was Mohammed Nouri, who joined them with the hope of finding the bodies of his missing family members.
عند دخول مدينة الفلوجة وبعد المعركة مباشرة هي كانت مدينة أشباح تماما 100%، مدينة رعب، مدينة خوف، مدينة جثث، مدينة رائحة. لا تزال بعد مرور 15 عام هذه الصورة موجودة راسخة في ذهني، أنه مدينة ممكن كنا أنه لا تعود هذه المدينة كما كانت في عهدها السابق.
Nouri says that during the battle between US forces and armed groups in Fallujah, the US used cluster bombs, white phosphorus and napalm bombs that caused widespread death and destruction.
ونضع عليها أرقام ونضع عليها بعض الأماكن نشير أنه هذه الجثة وجدت بالبيت الفلاني بالمكان الفلاني أو بالقرب من فلان أو بالقرب نشيرها ونضع دفنها في المقابر التي تم تحديدها.
Heavy bombardment from the US-led invasion displaced many, but Salima and her family decided to stay in Fallujah. She recalls a strike that left people suffocating and some with their skin peeling off. Almost 50 people, including children, were killed.
أسلحة الكيميائي والفسفور الابيض واليورانيوم اللي انضربنا بيها ما كانت تخطر على بال أي إنسان، إلى درجة إنه وصلنا بيها نشوف من فتحات بسيطة إنه الكلاب تاكل من لحم البشر وما نقدر نوصل ندفنه. قسم من الضحايا اللي ناس قدرت توصلهم دفنهم بحدائق بيوتهم، قسم من الضحايا بالأنقاض مال البيوت، قسم من الضحايا اندفنوا اللي قدرنا نوصلهم ونوصلهم اندفنوا بملعب الفلوجة كان سابقا، وهسه حاليا هم مقبرة الشهداء والكل يعرف هذا الشيء. تدمرنا، ضاعت هواي ناس لحد الآن ناس مفقودة ما حد يعرف مصيرها شنو.
The US built more than 500 military bases in Iraq during the operation, many around cities. The bases would serve as storehouses for radioactive material and ammunition. The waste generated from these bases included uranium-coated explosives, batteries, electronics, human waste, and plastics that were disposed of in huge open-air burn pits. The pits would burn day in and day out, sending plumes of toxic gases into the air. Researchers collected samples from babies living close to these bases and found elevated levels of thorium in their bodies. They concluded that
the closer that you live to a US military base in Iraq, the higher the thorium in your body and the more likely you are to suffer serious congenital deformities and birth defects.
Qusay Muhammad's daughter, Sabah, has been suffering from a deformity in her spine and right loin since her birth. Muhammad says that people don't know that living in Fallujah is a threat to the future of their children.
ومن الطانا اياها وسلموا لنا اياها كنا طبعا ملفلفه هي ما عرفنا بالموضوع. اثناء تنظيفها من قبل والدتي بالبيت انه نادوني قالوا لي تعال شوف بنتك. فبصراحه بوقتها من شفتها اتفاجأت، كانت مصيبه. لقيت والدتها طبعا تبكي ووالدتي ايضا تبكي. من شفنا التشوه والحاله الموجوده بها الطفله لحد الان يعني ما انسى ذاك يعني يوم، يعني فاجعه كانت بالنسبه لي وبالنسبه لوالدتها.
The indiscriminate use of depleted uranium is a clear violation of Article 35 of the Geneva Convention, which prohibits any means or methods of warfare that cause superfluous injury or unnecessary suffering, prohibits those nations from resorting to means of war that could inflict extensive and long-term damage to human health and the environment. The use of these weapons has not just affected civilians. Many US veterans who served at these bases have suffered from fatal diseases. Some have even died.
The irony is we invaded Iraq in 2003 to destroy its non-existent WMDs. To do it, we fired these new weapons, causing radioactive casualties.
As the toxic remnants of the US invasion seep through Fallujah generations later, accountability for the lives destroyed still remains elusive.